I watched the movie The Last Supper in theaters over the weekend, and after watching the House of David show and the giant disappointment that was, I was cautious about seeing this movie and worrying that I would be disappointed again. And after watching The Last Supper, I have some thoughts. But before we get into my thoughts, make sure to like this video and to subscribe to the channel, as we have a lot of exciting content that is going to be coming your way over the next few weeks and months. Now, on to my thoughts. The Last Supper is not your typical telling of the Passion Week story. It contains all the elements of the Passion Week, but this movie has the largest part of its focus on the Last Supper meal and the events surrounding it, hence the name of the movie. This movie is a very good representation and adaptation of the biblical text, and they stay true to the biblical sources. The majority of the scriptural influence used for this movie comes from Matthew, Mark, and Luke. There are a few elements that come from John's Gospel, though. Now, I'm sure there will be some people who will point out very tiny or minute details to complain about, but those would be overly critical. Like I do with every biblical adaptation I see, as soon as I finish watching it, I go straight to my Bible and reread the biblical account to check it for accuracy and authenticity. Now with this story, there were 4 Gospels to go through, but after examination, it was a very well done adaptation. There may be stylistic choices that people may not like, but this story is true to the biblical account. Now for some things that I really liked about this movie. I really enjoyed the contrast that they did with the Last Supper meal and the Jewish Seder meal. If you don't know, the Seder meal is the Passover meal shared by those in the Jewish faith to commemorate their time in Egyptian captivity and their freedom from that bondage by God through Moses. This story is told in detail in the book of Exodus. Now, both these meals are related to each other, and the Last Supper meal takes the Seder meal to a much more deeper and spiritual level. The Seder meal focuses on the historical liberation of the Israelites, while the Last Supper focuses on the spiritual liberation offered through Jesus' sacrifice. As the Last Supper meal was the main focus of this film, I think they did a phenomenal job portraying that on screen and contrasting these two meals. Another part of the story that they gave a little bit more attention to was Judas and his betrayal of Jesus. I think they did a great job of using imagery to show Judas moving towards listening to Satan's lies to fully being filled by Satan until he finally betrayed Jesus. They also contrast how Judas reacts to his remorse of betraying Jesus and how Peter reacts to his remorse to denying Jesus, just as Jesus told him he would. I also like how this movie ended. After the final scene went dark, there was a message on the screen that said that this isn't just a story to be told, but an invitation to know Jesus, which I thought was fantastic. If I had one critique about that, it would be that I would have liked to see some type of resource for anyone who had any type of questions or in where they could go to get those answered. Now, onto some things that I didn't like. And I'm probably really being a bit nitpicky about these things, as there wasn't much that I didn't like about this movie. The first is at the beginning of the movie. It starts out earlier in Jesus' ministry, and he is speaking to a crowd by the water. You can hear Jesus echoing lines from the Sermon on the Mount in the background. Then they jump into the feeding of the 5,000, and then jump into another part of scripture that I just obviously can't remember at this time. It just felt like they shoehorned a bunch of parts of scripture for no reason into this opening scene. The feeding of the 5,000 is referenced again later in the movie, so maybe they could have just stuck to that scene instead of adding all of them into one. They also used this opening scene to lay the groundwork that Judas was not so good and had other objectives on his mind. I don't think they needed to put this in the beginning part of the movie. The other thing that I didn't like was that they used references to verses from other parts of scripture as filler for dialogue, and it just didn't hit right to my ears. I don't think it needed to be done to tell the story that they were telling. Again, these are very nitpicky, and I wouldn't call them bad, just more stylistic choices that didn't sit well with me and I didn't like. I will say that some people will probably complain as they briefly expressed the crucifixion and resurrection in this movie. I know people will disagree with that choice, but this movie focuses on the Last Supper and not the crucifixion and resurrection. I really didn't see any issue with it, as they still were expressed in the film. Overall, this is a great movie. If you planned on seeing it, I think you're really going to enjoy it. And if you didn't plan on it, or you didn't even know that this movie existed, then you're not going to regret going to see it in theaters. I hope you enjoyed today's video, everyone. Make sure that you like this video and subscribe to the channel, and may God bless you and keep you, and we'll see you in the next video.